Gruß, willkommen in einem and in an aufregendes video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 9 of my battle series of videos. This video will cover the Battle of Marathon, which was a battle fought between the Persians and the Greeks, principally the Athenians, in September or possibly August, on possibly the 12th of either of those months. This video is mainly focused on looking at the battle from a figure gaming point of view, which includes the order of battle, troop types, and the flow of the battle. If you wish a big picture of why the battle was fought, then this may not be the video for you. But if you want to know about the troop type, force mixes, and what actually occurred on the battlefield, then continue to view on. Unlike many of my previous videos, we do have a lot more information about this battle, but even so, it's not what I would consider as very detailed, and does contain a lot of vague references. So, once again, I'm going to make some assumptions and use what most historians feel is the most likely course or actions that occurred during the battle. I'll first cover the order of battle and troop types of the Greek army. While confirming numbers is almost impossible, it's reasonable to assume the Greeks consisted of 9,000 Athenians and 1,000 Plataeans. Looking at games which attempt to duplicate this battle, Lost Battles being one of them, when you look at the book and board game Lost Battles, this shows the Greek army consisted of average hoplites with no other troop type present. The SPI Spartan board game has the Greek army consisting of only militia spearmen, again with no other troop types being present. As a result, it's comparatively easy to identify the troop types involved on at least the Greek side. If we assume there is a total of 10,000 Greeks, there could have been 11,000, but let's just assume there are 10,000. They would have been organised into 10 Athenian tribal regiments of 900 men each and a Plataean regiment of 1,000 men. Unlike my normal practice, in this case I'm using the DBM army list, which is pretty much the same as the DBMM army list, to give me a better idea of the troop types available to the Greeks in this period. While it's probable only hoplites were involved at Marathon, let's cover the other troop types which could be expected in an Athenian army, including Plataeans. There were no Athenian cavalry at Marathon, according to our few sources. Some army list shows hoplites mounted on horses. In this army list, Greek cavalry are irregular cavalry and considered as inferior in skill and morale, so weren't particularly great. While it is surprising no light troops were present, most sources and guesses indicate the Greeks consisted of only one troop type, militia armed infantry, with a spear and heavy shield and trained for melee combat. The army list classes them as irregular spearmen, and they're considered as ordinary in terms of skill and morale. So, for the period, reasonably good troops. Other troops that you may expect if the Athenians had more time to prepare are Thracian medium infantry, which are of high quality. These troop types are only available after 541 BC, which fits in to our 490 BC date, but these troops were unlikely to be at Marathon. The Athenians simply didn't have the time or inclination to bring them down. They are considered as irregular auxilia and can be either ordinary or superior. Auxilia can conduct hand-to-hand fighting, but have a focus on mobility. There is no evidence for slingers or archers at Marathon. The army list classes them as irregular persolae and considered as ordinary skill morale if the Athenians actually fielded them. Persolae are skirmishers who avoid hand-to-hand combat and mainly use missile fire. As I've mentioned before, I am very surprised no javelmen or skirmishers were in the Athenian army, and I find it interesting that the javelmen are considered as inferior in this army list, so aren't particularly good. The army list classes them as irregular persolae and considered as inferior. Persolae are skirmishers, which, as I've indicated before, avoiding hand-to-hand combat as much as possible. Now it's time to cover the Persian army. According to Wiki, the probable strength of the Persian army was 25,000 and with 1,000 cavalry. Some of this force embarked on the ships to sail to Athens, so we are uncertain how many stayed behind, but we know the cavalry did leave. Most wargaming sources indicate the Persian army was probably around about 15,000, at least for the battle. When we look at our Lost Battle game and also book, it has the Persian army consisting of average archers, levy hoplites, average heavy cavalry and levy light cavalry. The levy hoplites are Ionian hoplites. When we look at the SPI Spartan board game, it has the Persian army consisting of militia infantry, militia spearmen, barbarian infantry, bowmen and skirmishers. The SPI Spartan board game claims, or seems to indicate, the Persian consisted of 5 different troop types. 2 would have been Persian and s5e infantry. A small number of hoplites, possibly Ionians, although there is no mention of them actually in the battle. This leaves us with skirmishers and barbarian infantry. Let's now drill down into the Persian troop types in a little bit more detail using our DBM army list, or DBM army list. While it's unlikely any cavalry were involved, I'll cover them quickly. A lot of the troop types here would also be unlikely to be involved, as I would expect the Persian invasion use part of the core army supported by local troops. So troops from India almost certainly were not involved in this battle. The first cavalry type, guard cavalry, would be the elite of the Persian cavalry force, in this case regular. They would not have been involved in the invasion because they would have only been involved if the supreme leader of the Archimedean Persian Empire was there, and he was not. This is classed as regular cavalry. Basic quality is regular cavalry and ordinary quality. Cavalry are horsemen who are not skirmishers, although mobility is still a key tactic. The standard Persian cavalry, which could have been present on the battlefield if they had not all embarked, we're not certain. These are classed as irregular cavalry, ordinary quality, so reasonably good cavalry for the period. The Caspian and Scythians in this troop type are light horse, possibly almost certainly bow-armed. None of these would have been at the battle, which the army list seems to imply as well. They are irregular light horsemen, considered as fast, which means they fight in a thick swarm or small parties, closing in succession at the gallop for a short-range shooting pass with bows and then using their speed to avoid combat. This is a really odd sort of troop type, so I have no idea what Sagartian lasso men were, but they were irregular light cavalry and I assumed armed with a lasso, almost certainly not at Marathon. They are irregular light horsemen, considered as ordinary. The next type, the Bactrian cavalry. These are high-quality irregular light cavalry. It's probably unlikely they were present at Marathon, which is implied again by the army list. They are irregular light horsemen, which are very good, considered as superior. Another troop type that was certainly not at Marathon are Bedouin or Arab cavalry. They are classed as irregular cavalry, classed as ordinary, or irregular light horsemen, classed as inferior. The elite infantry of the Persian army are the Immortals. It's unlikely the Immortals were present at Marathon. Again, they normally hang around with the supreme leader of the Archimedean Persian Empire, and he was not here at the time. In these army lists, they are all bow-armed, but only the front rank has shields, and they were of a high quality. They are regular bowmen, with the front rank being classed as exceptional and the rear as superior. The bulk of the infantry would be this troop type. This troop type would be compose the centre of the Persian line, with the Persians being in the front rank and the s5e archers in the rear rank. As with the Immortals, the front rank are armed with shields and is of a higher quality, and the rear are bow-armed troops with slightly lesser quality. They are irregular bowmen, with the front rank exceptional and the rear ordinary. In addition to the close order infantry, we also have slightly looser quality infantry, or looser order infantry, which is what this is. This represents the medium infantry, or what DBM calls auxilia. This shows what a Papagonian may have looked like, except he would have had high boots. The army lists seem to imply this troop type was not present in Marathon, but this is not conclusive and may represent the barbarian infantry mentioned in the SPI Spartan board game. They are irregular auxilia, classed as ordinary. This troop type represents the skirmish archers. It's highly likely this troop type was present and on the flanks. They are irregular pisoli, or skirmishers, classed as ordinary, also armed with bow. In addition to the skirmish bowmen, we also have more close order bowmen, which is this troop type. These represent the bulk of the bowmen, which would be in closer order and focus more on mass bow fire. The army list implies this troop type was not present at Marathon. They are irregular bowmen, classed as ordinary. This is about the best picture of Persian levy dreg I could find on the internet. It's unlikely they were present at Marathon. They are irregular hordes, classed as ordinary. Persians get a lot of skirmish troops, so we get yet more skirmish troops. The army list implies this troop type was not at Marathon. It's irregular pisoli, or skirmishers, classed as superior. We haven't finished with the skirmish troops, in this case a mix of archers and javelin. The image is the only one of a Militärgeschichte I could find. The caption does indicate this troop type was also sometimes armed with a bow, so perhaps this early image is wrong and the trooper should be holding a short javelin instead of a spear. It's possible this troop type was present. It's an irregular persolae or skirmishers, half ordinary and half inferior. Now we come to the hoplites. I have to assume a Lydian or Ionian hoplite is the same as an Athenian hoplite. While almost every game I know includes Ionian hoplites, there's no actual evidence they fought at Marathon. I suspect they may have, and I think this is a high probability, but, just gives you an idea of how little information we really have about the battle. They are classed as irregular spearmen, classed as inferior, because they don't have the same enthusiasm of, let's say, the Athenian hoplites who are defending their homeland. This troop type almost certainly did not fight at Marathon, that is Assyrian and Chaldean infantry, but they are nonetheless a very interesting troop type. They are half regular spearmen, classed as inferior, and half regular persolae, or skirmishers, classed as ordinary. As if we did not have enough javelin, yet more of them. It's unlikely this troop type was present. They are irregular persolae or skirmishers classed as inferior. As with many of the troop types I've been covering just recently, it's unlikely the Persians fielded Indian bowmen at Marathon. Nonetheless, they would have been a rather interesting troop type if they were there. We end off our list, our very long list, with Thracians, medium cavalry. While it's possible some may have been present, I suspect not, considering where the fleet left from. They are irregular auxilia classed as ordinary. Now let's drill down into the battle. This is a classic example of a battle which has been analysed so much you have significantly more theories than actual evidence. This is one guess of the battle, mostly likely incorrect. Here we have more guesses. The only reason why we know this is incorrect is the remnants of the Greek camp were found and this does not show it correctly. Here we have yet another attempt. In the end, I'll go with the maps in Wiki as they show the battle in reasonable detail and could be as accurate as we'll ever get. This shows the Wiki map, which I think is about the closest we're ever going to get to reality. Exactly how the two sides formed up is unknown, and there are many theories. But however this occurred, both armies formed up and prepared for battle. The distance between the two armies at this point had narrowed to a distance not less than 8 stadia, or about 1,500 metres. The Greek commander ordered the two tribes forming the centre of the Greek formation to be arranged in the depth of 4 ranks, while the rest of the tribes at their flanks were in ranks of 8. Some modern commentators have suggested this was a deliberate ploy to encourage a double envelopment of the Persian centre. However, this suggests the level of training that the Greeks are thought to have not possessed at this time. There is little evidence for such tactical thinking in the Greek battles until 371 BC. It is therefore possible that this arrangement was made, perhaps at the last moment, so that the Athenian line was as long as the Persian line and would thus not be outflanked. When the Athenian line was ready, according to one source, the simple signal to advance was given by the commanders, Militärgeschichte, and it was, in Greek obviously, at them. Herodotus implies the Athenians ran the whole distance to the Persian lines, a feat under the weight of hoplite armoury generally thought to be physically impossible. Most likely they marched until they reached the limit of the archers' effectiveness, the beaten zone, roughly 200 metres, and then broke into a run towards the enemy. Another possibility is that they ran up to the 200 metre mark in broken ranks, and then reformed for the march into battle from there. That's probably unlikely. Herodotus suggests that this was the first time a Greek army ran into battle in this way. This was probably because it was the first time that a Greek army was facing an enemy comprised primarily of missile troops. This is actually not true. The Athenians were involved in at least one battle during the Ionian Revolt, and they probably experienced this, and maybe the lessons learnt from that is the reason why the Athenians did what they did. Anyway, back to the battle. All this is eventually much to the surprise of the Persians. In their minds, the Persians' minds, the charge the Athenians conducted with madness must be fatal, seeing that they were few, and yet they pressed forward in a run, having neither cavalry nor archers. Anyway, whatever happens, the Persians were certainly surprised by this tactical act. Indeed, based on their previous experience of the Greeks, the Persians might be excused for this. Herodotus tells us that the Athenians at Marathon were first to endure looking at Median dress and men wearing it, for up until then, just hearing the names of the Medes caused the Hellenes to panic. Once again, a bit of a stretch. The Athenians met the Persians previously in the Ionian Revolt, and they did do some reasonable fighting, but the panic bit may be quite valid because the Persians kept on winning in the Ionian Revolt, so there was certainly room for fear. Anyway, passing through the hail of arrows launched by the Persian army, protected for the most part by the armour, the Greek line finally made contact with the enemy army. However, the armour, it's unlikely that all the Greeks had metal armour. I suspect they were really protected by their large shields. Anyway, my comments that I've added to this quote from a source that I found. Herodotus states, they fought a long time at Marathon. In the centre of the line, the foreigners prevailed, where the Persians and s5e were arranged. The foreigners prevailed there and broke through in pursuit inland. But on each wing the Athenians and Plataeans prevailed. The Athenian wings quickly routed the inferior Persian levies, or low-quality troops on the flanks, before turning inwards to surround the Persian centre, which had been more successful against the thin Greek centre. The battle ended when the Persian centre then broke in panic towards their ship. Pursued by the Greeks, some, unaware of the local terrain, ran towards the swamps where unknown numbers drowned. The Athenians pursued the Persians back to their ships and managed to capture 7 ships, although the majority were able to launch successfully. Herodotus recounts the story that some guy called Clygenius, brother of the playwright my apologies for my Greek, who was among the fighters, charged into the sea, grabbed one Persian trireme and started pulling it towards shore. A number of the crew saw him, cut off his hand, and Clygenius died. Herodotus records that 6,400 Persian bodies were counted on the battlefield, and it's unknown how many more perished in the swamps. He also reported the Athenians lost 192 men, and that the Plataeans 11. Among the dead was the war archon Callimachus and the general Cestios. Let's swing back to some of the games, in this case the Lost Battle game of the battle. This shows the Lost Battle's deployment. As you can see here, Lost Battle assumes the cavalry were present, or at least some of it was. In Lost Battles, the Persian centre is held by average troops, which gives it an advantage in the centre. The flanks possess levy troops. In Lost Battles, the Persian side is almost 20,000 men strong, while the Athenians are about 10,000. I have no idea if this is correct or not, but the game gives you a historical result. Personally, I would remove the Persian cavalry and reduce the number of levy units to bring the Persians closer to 15,000 men, but the result is the same, although quicker, so is a moot point. In the game Spartan, or pre-stags, the Persian Q position have the sea to their backs, which I suspect is incorrect. The force mix also has the Athenians with 11,000 men against about 16,000 Persians. If you use historical deployments, the result is also reasonable. So I have no idea if this is correct or if it's not correct, but the result seems reasonable. I've played this battle using Lost Battle, using figures, and plan on creating a figure game version of SPI Spartan board game, which I'll use to refight the battle as well. Actually, I did complete this, P17CW, and yes, I can get a game out of it, although I must admit, in all my games of P17CW where I duplicate the Battle of Marathon, it takes about 90 minutes, so it's not a particularly exciting game. While a significant battle, I'm uncertain as a result how actually interesting this battle is to refight. And so this completes episode 9 of my military history videos covering a rather significant battle. Even if not very interesting, I would suggest that this may be an easy battle to create a scenario for and have a very quick game. Alle guten Dingen kommen zu einem Ende.